Greetings, beautiful souls. Welcome back to our sacred space of self-discovery and spiritual exploration. Today, we delve into a topic that often confuses and perplexes many on their journey toward awakening. Join me as we explore the profound idea that the ego is not an enemy to be defeated, but rather a companion on our path to enlightenment. Today, we're unraveling the mysteries of the ego on our journey of spiritual awakening. There's a common belief floating around that we need to kick the ego to the curb. But what if I told you it's not the bad guy we often make it out to be? Grab a seat and let's chat about why the ego isn't your enemy on the path of awakening. Let's start with the basics. The ego is like your personal identity manager. It's the storyteller, the one that says, "This is me and these are my preferences." It's not the villain, it's just trying to make sense of the world. To truly understand the ego, we must first acknowledge its existence within us. The ego is not an enemy, it's a fundamental aspect of our human experience. It's the part of us that forms our identity, helps us navigate the world, and distinguishes us as unique beings. It's not about eradicating the ego, but rather transforming our relationship with it. Imagine the ego as a loyal friend, a companion that has been with us since the beginning of our human journey. It plays a crucial role in our survival, shaping our personality, preferences, and how we interact with the world. Instead of pushing it away, let's explore how we can harmonize with the ego on our spiritual quest. Many people in the spiritual community have this notion that becoming spiritually enlightened will get rid of the ego once and for all. But in a true sense, you cannot, only to transcend it or stop identifying with it as a mode of living. Ego, that false sense of identity that you will call the personality, the separate self, or the subjective self, is that part of you that defines you the moment your mother gives you a name. During your life, you accumulate certain experiences, stories, and beliefs about who you are, and those things become part of the false identity that a lot of people believe is who they are. Imagine the ego as the narrator of your life story. It adds flavor, drama, and sometimes a touch of comedy. It's not inherently bad, it's just basically doing its job. Of course, you need an ego to function and navigate this world. It's a wonderful tool you need to assist you in this world. Can you imagine a life without the ego? It would be like a movie without a main character, a bit dull and lacking in personality. You will continue to have personality traits, opinions, your name, occupation, age, beliefs, and so on. But this time, you realize that it's just a mask you are wearing and it's not who you are anymore. The problem is not the ego here, the problem is when you confuse it for who you truly are. Don't get me wrong, you will still occasionally fall back into egoic patterns, something like going unconscious again. You don't have to worry about falling back into egoic patterns, you simply just observe it without an attachment to the ego. That's it. There is a misconception out there that says ego is a bad thing and it needs to go away. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not how this works. You will continue to have an ego as long as you are still here in this physical realm. Having a spiritual awakening means that you no longer derive your sense of self from this egoic mind, but know yourself as this infinite light of awareness. Embrace the ego and love it with compassion without making it an enemy. It depends on how you use your ego. If you are using the ego for the wrong reasons, like creating suffering for others, devaluing the present moment, or anything destructive, then it can turn out to be a source of pain and suffering for yourself and others. Not because it's a bad thing, but because you misuse it for the wrong reasons. If you are using it for the right reasons, then it's a wonderful tool and it can serve you well. The ego's primary gig is keeping you safe. It's the internal security guard, always on the lookout for potential threats. It loves routines and familiar territory because, in its world, that's the safe zone. Take a moment to appreciate the ego's vigilance. It's not out to get you, it's trying to protect you from the uncertainties of life. The main purpose of having spiritual enlightenment is not to get rid of the ego. The true purpose of spiritual awakening is to rediscover what you have forgotten. In other words, you forgot who you truly are by believing that you were your mind, the egoic sense of self. Having a spiritual awakening means that you are remembering who you truly are, beyond the confines of the ego and duality. Rather than viewing the ego as a hindrance, let's consider embracing it with love and compassion. The ego becomes problematic when it dominates our consciousness, leading to self-centeredness and attachment. However, when we acknowledge it with awareness, we can transform its energy into a force for growth and self-realization. One of the key lessons on the spiritual path is transcending dualities. Instead of labeling the ego as good or bad, let's explore the middle path, recognizing the ego's existence without attaching judgment. This allows us to move beyond the limitations of duality and embrace a more holistic understanding of ourselves. Here's a burning question: do we really have to get rid of the ego to be all spiritual and awakened? Short answer: nope. The ego isn't the enemy, it's a companion on the journey. Think of your spiritual journey like a road trip. The ego is the driver navigating the twists and turns. It might play some loud music, but it's driving you to self-discovery. Instead of treating the ego like an unwanted guest, let's learn to be buddies. Harmonize with it, understand it. When you fight the ego, it's like wrestling with a balloon, it just bounces back. The next time you notice the ego acting up, take a breath. Acknowledge it, give it a nod, and say, "Hey, I see you." It's about finding that sweet spot where you and the ego dance through life hand in hand. On the path of awakening, it's essential to strike a balance between the ego and the higher self. The ego can be a powerful tool when aligned with our higher purpose. By integrating the ego into our spiritual practice, we can harness its energy to fuel our journey towards self-discovery and enlightenment. And yes, challenges and conflicts may arise in our lives, often triggering the ego's defensive mechanisms. Instead of viewing these situations as obstacles, see them as opportunities for self-reflection and evolution. It doesn't mean when you face a challenge makes the ego a bad thing. The ego is just doing its job because it is its nature to be dualistic, like good and bad. The only thing you need to do is to become aware of it without an attachment to it. The ego, when approached with awareness, can guide us towards areas that need healing and transformation. Dear friends, as we conclude our journey today, I invite you to reconsider your relationship with the ego. Embrace it with love, integrate it into your spiritual practice, and let it be a guiding force on your path to awakening. Remember, the ego is not the enemy but a companion, ready to walk beside you as you navigate the beautiful landscape of self-discovery. Until we meet again, may your journey be filled with light, love, and profound insights. Namaste.